welcome to Writing Marginalia, a place for creative conversations. My name is Brianna Samansky. I am your host. Today we are joined by writer, interdisciplinary artist, and cultural architect Faylita Hicks. Her debut poetry collection, HoodWitch, was a Lambda Literary finalist. Her most recent collection, A Map of My Want, is a 2025 Midwest Book Award winner and Chicago Writers Association Book of the Year. She serves as chair of the Guild Literary Complex, core faculty at StoryStudio Chicago, and MFA faculty at the University of Nevada-Reno. 2025 Haymarket Writing Freedom Fellow, Grammy-nominated artist, PBS documentary subject, and Recording Academy voting member. She lives, writes, and holds ceremony in Chicago. Hi, Faylita. Welcome.
Hi, how
Hello.
are you?
I'm doing good, and you?
I am excited.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so interested in seeing what kind of cards we're going to pull because you do so much. So let's just jump right in. I'm going to share my screen first. Okay, I use a horseshoe spread. I'm going to hover over a card. Tell me which position you want it in, 1 through 7.
Okay.
Oh, I only have 6. Wait, no, I do have 7. Okay, hold on. Okay, let's do this one right here.
Okay. So the card beneath that one is number 1.
Gotcha. Okay,
And
let's do this
number
one.
2 is the card. I'm trying to point at it. Number 2 is the card that's at the bottom, but the one that's further on the bottom. Right there. Yes.
This one.
Number 2.
Let me move these out of the way for. I think I pulled 8 for you,
Um,
so let's see. Okay, what's next?
and 3 is that one that you just pulled.
This
Go
one.
back. Yep, that one. And 4 is, that's okay. He wants to be 4. Let him be 4.
It's gonna be 4.
He wants to be 4. Let him be 4. 5 is going to be not that one, but at the top now, right there. That's 5.
Okay,
And then 6 is the one on the bottom right below it.
this
Nope.
one.
There you go. Uh-huh.
This one. Okay. Let me try to make these a little better organized.
I'm so excited about this.
Are
So when I do my own readings with clients, normally I'm like, I wish I could show you what was happening on my screen. Like I wish I like I'm normally looking down. So I was like, I wish I could show you the cards as they're splayed out so you can see all of the things that I'm seeing. And I just taught a class about oh, that's great. Oh wow. And I just
isn't
taught
it?
a class called The Writer's Tarot. And I was like, it's so hard to show you things without showing you things. So I'm going to have to see this website you got going on. This is great.
Yeah, I'll give you information about it after. I was hoping the High Priestess would come up. Like these cards definitely make sense, don't you think?
I do.
With the High Priestess there, I mean all of it. Okay, so let's
There's
just
only one card
start.
I expected that I don't see, but I'm sure it'll be back.
What card?
The Magician.
Well, I get that sense from the King of Cups because tell me why you say the Magician.
So a lot of people who are just kind of getting familiar with my work, they know me for one thing or another, and they're not aware of all of the things that I do. So they're only familiar with that thing that I think, they know when they meet me. And then they're like, so what are you up to? And I was like, do you really want that answer? Because I'm doing all of the things. And they're like, all of the things. I was like, no, but really. For example, most people know me now for my published work. 10 years ago, people knew me for the Poetry Slam. 2 years ago, I was doing a one person show in which I was acting someone else's work. So I'm also an actor and I'm also a member of the Recording Academy. And I just did my debut solo art exhibit. And so people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, everything. Like, I don't know how else to put that. Everything.
Yeah.
So that's why the Magician. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the magician is a fantastic card to describe you, especially because, I mean, interdisciplinary artist doesn't even say it all. Like you mentioned, you have the beat poetry, you have your, debut poetry collection. Oh, this is actually the second one. You
This is
have,
like, that's not the debut.
sorry, that's the second one. You have the HoodWitch, you have that one. You just were nominated for a Grammy for your work on a fantastic blues album. I think it was
It's a
Antonio
Fury.
Vergara. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did have your, I forget what it's called, your artistic exhibit, and that was in Chicago, right?
Yeah, so the debut art exhibit is here in Chicago, but I did a ceremonial ritual. It's a durational poetry ritual that I did for someone else's art exhibit in San Diego just 2 weeks ago. But I know we're jumping ahead, but like
Well,
that's why.
so the magician is fantastic, but I see it in the King of Cups too, and I will say because you've established yourself. So it's kind of you. To me, the King of Cups is like the established artist, the creator, the person who has high quality art, who is a visionary. This is the person. And the magician is such a fantastic card for recognizing all the things you do and kind of the alchemy of it. But I like the King of Cups for you in the present position is what that card is in for me, because it is so past present, because you've worked very hard and very long, and I feel like this is you, especially when I think I saw on your Instagram how you received your Grammy nomination and just the overwhelming feeling that you had. It seemed like you got teary eyed or cried. And I just feel like that's that moment where it's like the recognition and you've established yourself. You're a true artist. And so I think magician is good for recognizing talent and all the magic of it. And the King of Cups is like, you're here, you've arrived, is how I feel. At least that's the sense for me. Tell us, I know that you've spent decades working on your career. You've mentioned it. You've been doing it a long time. It seems, my impression is that there have been ups and downs. And I wonder, how does one become so diverse in everything that they, like literally you do a little bit of everything. You mentioned acting. You're doing poetry. You're doing music. You're doing writing. Your memoir is coming out next year. I mean, there's so much. So do you have the educational background? Is this all just natural rawness, talent coming from you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the truth of the matter is that first I'm going to reflect on the King of Cups, then I'm going to tell you what's in my head. Whenever I get the King of Cups, I actually am not a fan of him.
Really?
I don't like the King of Cups.
Oh, okay.
And it might be a personal thing, but I think it has more to do with how separate the energy of the King of Cups is. It's in this all this water and it's just separated from everything. There's no support or background for it. It's in this constant emotional space and it's just separate. And it's funny because I never think of myself as aloof, but I do think other people think I'm aloof. I think other people might think I'm a little bit like, just inaccessible. And I never want to be, but I do recognize that that's how I come off sometimes. And so I was like, no, not the King of Cups for the present,
And it's the
but
King of Cups is air and water, so it's your Scorpio and
yeah,
Gemini, right? It's not your Virgo in
yeah,
there.
yeah. Yeah. But so that part, in terms of why I do so many different things, I started off wanting to be a pop star. And I tell everybody this, and they might look at me sideways, but I was raised in Central Texas. I was raised around a bunch of different people from different backgrounds and lifestyles. I do mean quite literally from different economic backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, and experiences. And so my family was low income and I was in an impoverished family, but I would also go to Bible study with people who lived in many mansions. And I would go to parties that were like, completely dressed out. And those were the types of differences. So when I say that I wanted to be like Britney Spears, I'm saying I grew up in a different kind of background, okay? I thought I would be a pop star when I was a teen, and I wanted to go to Juilliard to learn, and my mother refused to take me to the audition. I did go to the very first audition for American Idol in Austin, Texas, which, if people don't remember, Kelly Clarkson won that one. And I was one of the people who was in line with Kelly Clarkson for that particular audition. And I actually did make it to LA. But my mother, again, refused to take me to LA because she had to take care of my sisters and she didn't want me to, she didn't understand what was going on. And so the first part of my journey was me feeling like I was missing out. I couldn't go to auditions. I couldn't like go to LA. I couldn't do all these things. And then I went to, my first college that I went to, the theater person was all like, hey, yeah, no, we're only going to do race specific roles. And none of the roles for any of the plays that year would involve a Black femme person, which meant that I would not be able to get on stage for my first year of college. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be on stage. And that is where the Poetry Slam comes in. So I thought I was going to be a pop star. Then I tried to do theater and kept getting like blocked. So I was like, I'll go to the Poetry Slam. I could get on stage every single week. I can write what I want to write. So I'll write myself a bunch of monologues. The monologues turned into poems. And after several years of competing and touring as a spoken word artist, right? Because now I get to go on tour, I'm doing spoken word poetry. After several years of that, I realized that I just wanted to spend more time with the words. And so I applied for my first MFA in 2009, and a whole lot of events happened in 2010. I don't know if we're getting into that right now, but I started my first MFA program in 2010. And I ended up leaving that MFA program because they were trying very hard to only work with certain kinds of people. And it was just not where I needed to be. So I left and I went and got a real job. And I did that for several years and I absolutely hated it. It sent me to the hospital 5 times in an ambulance because I was so stressed. It was a sales call position. And I left. And the day that I left, I started my own company. And that company was comedy, poetry, pop up art. I was like, I'm just going to bring all the stuff I wish was around me into a showcase that I would love to go to. And that's kind of how almost everything started happening. I was basically using what resources I had to make my dreams come true, even when it felt like things kept blocking me. And so the reason why I do so many things is out of necessity. It's kind of like if I'm not doing one thing, I can do another thing. And if that doesn't work right now, or there's a block here, I can do another thing. And the fact is, I just feel the need to express so much so that I don't know how to not do things. That's the long answer to your question.
Love it. There actually, it sparked so many ideas, and I see it in the cards here. I'm going to start with the first question. I mean, we see the Five of Pentacles, which will have multiple meanings, but the initial lack of support from your mother. It sounds like it's a little bit the obligation to your sister, but also maybe not really understanding your dreams. Or can you explain a little bit more about that lack of support?
Yeah, it's really hard, and I'm sure one day she will have to be okay with me telling the full story. But my mother let me know very young. She got pregnant with me when she was 17 years old, and a teenage. She was a senior at high school, and she got pregnant with me. Gave birth to me a month after turning 18. So she turned 18 September 4th. I was born on October 31st. She had dreams. She wanted to be an actress and a model, and she was very cute. Very, very cute. Very much could be an actor and a model. She was in theater in high school. She did photos. She was great. She could have been both the actress and the model if that had been the journey. And me, I was the very first one born, and I have 3 younger sisters. And so by the time I'm old enough to be in high school, wanting to go and do all of these things, she's got 4 kids. She's still a single mom trying to take care of us. And if anything, and I think I kind of cover it to start off with in my first memoir, there's going to have to be more because of the nature of things. But I really feel like, unfortunately for her, it was like I couldn't do it. Why do you get to do it? And so it's kind of been that way for all of the big things that I consider important in my life, where like first book deal, call my mom. My mom was not happy about that book. She was not happy about that book at all. Second book comes out. Yay. I don't know if she owns either one of my books. I don't know if she's listened to any of my albums. I don't know. My grandmother has seen me perform more recently than my mother has. And so that's kind of, and my dad is there, but my dad also we have our own issues. And so, yeah.
I have a similar kind of background with my mother. I think, it won't stop us. I will say that.
No.
Yeah, right? And it doesn't stop us. Let's call out the sun right now, because that's the card that's speaking to me after this part. Is the sun talks, well, it's how others see you. So how others see you: bright, energetic, positive, creative, so full of joy. And actually, I will say this. So I was reading A Map of Want, your second poetry collection, and I was listening to some of your beat poetry on Spotify, Onyx. And then I was thinking, it's so interesting how you are able to bring out the rawness and the reality of life and of desire. And I even get a sense of longing in some things, but it's not painful. Sometimes I'll read poetry and I'll just think, oh my God, that was so depressing, or I'll feel depressed after. And I don't feel, I think your art has an opposite effect on people. So even though it's able to be truthful in a true to life type of way, and without bringing people down, at least that's how I experienced your art. And in the sun and the others, I think other people do as well. And I think it's also your time to shine.
Well, I received that. I'm not going to argue that. Here's what I'm going to tell you I see in the sun card.
Sure.
Things that kind of always stand out to me are the brick wall, the need to create a separation between others and, in this case, myself. And that has a lot to do with I am able only to create because I set boundaries and I have to like exist in those boundaries. A good example is we were talking right before this call, I think, about how I stayed up all night to dance with the moon.
Yeah.
Right. And I went to bed around 3 o'clock. But right before I fell asleep, I realized that for most of my life, so you're getting like hot off the press, like epiphanies. Okay. For most of my life, I've not allowed myself to stay up because I want to sleep for a minimum of 9 hours. I'll sleep for 6 hours if I have to, 4 hours if I have to, but I would prefer 9 hours because that is where I feel most energetic after I've had that rest. And my time of day that is best for me is around noon to wake up, which means that I'm off for like jobs, I'm off for meetings. I am not working on regular people's schedule. Most people see if you sleep in like that, they're like, oh my God, you lazy, right? That idea of being lazy. And I have been operating on everybody else's schedule and everybody else's expectations. And I have to remember that my best creative self is what I need to protect. And so that wall is I'm only able to create and to produce because I have that wall of separation, that understanding of what I can do. So that's the thing that stands out to me almost all the time. Every time I look at the sun card, I'm like, okay, I might look a little naive to people who don't know me, or people don't know what I'm capable of, but I know what I'm capable of. And so both of those things. A part of the reason why I think my work, I don't want people to stay in a negative space after they engage my work. And that's because I believe the greatest joy comes from the greatest pain. And that is what it means to be human. It means to have extreme pain. But if you have extreme pain, that means you're also capable of extreme joy. And I have had extreme pain and I have had extreme joy. And that is the truth that I want to impart in my work. I want people to feel the full scope of what it means. I'm always hoping that I'm saying the thing that everybody else does not want to say. Yeah. When people experience my work, I want them to walk away with a sense of all that's possible in life. I do feel like there's a lot of work that's extremely one-dimensional. I come from a background of working in social justice where there's a lot of emphasis on the harm and there's a lot of focus in that space because people are trying to develop a sense of empathy for the situation or the cause. And I totally get it. And I think it's necessary. But I also need people to know that the reason why you should be protecting other humans is because they are humans. They have the full scope of being. I am someone who's formerly incarcerated, directly impacted. I have lost a lot of things. I don't want you to get the wrong idea when you see me having a good time and twerking that I was not being serious or I was not being real. Like, if you see me being goofy and joking about anime or something like that, I want you to understand that I have found a way to be all of the full scope of what it means to be human, all of the things that have gone wrong, all of the things that have gone right, and everything in between. I do think a lot of people emphasize the harm. And there's a story in my memoir that I think it's going to be hard for people to digest. And I didn't think I would put that story in the book, but I realized I needed to put that story in the book, that people had the context for the rest of the things. Yeah. I don't want to keep talking too long.
No,
Do you want me to
please.
tell you the story? I want to tell you the
Yeah,
story.
if you want to share, please.
So I was sexually assaulted um in college by a group. And it was completely unexpected. It was through someone who I knew. So basically, he set it up with his friends and it was a thing. And the way that I responded to that moment was the understanding that I could either spend the rest of my life being identified as the victim, or I could walk away and deal with it in another way for myself, and empower myself and not be identified as the victim for the rest of my life. So I chose not to report it. I chose not to write about it. I chose not to share their names. And I know that there are a lot of people who have big concerns about this, and it's understandable why they have those big concerns. But I also understood that at that chapter in my life, at that point in my life, I was so early in my creations of things. I knew that if I entered into a newspaper or, an article or a conversation at the college or anything that would be associated with the sides of this heinous act, right? I would forever be labeled the victim. That's how people would introduce me. That's how my story would go. They would start with that as opposed to who I am. And so I made a decision that I was like, no, I refuse. I have work to do and I refuse to let you lead my story. I refuse to let you be the thing that guides the rest of my journey for the rest of my life. I'm not doing that. And again, I know there are people who are going to disagree with it. I know people are not going to be excited about it. They don't want to hear that part because it's hard to believe that you can go through something that ugly, not report it, and still find, a way through things. It wasn't even the last time, and it wasn't even the worst time, and it wasn't even the thing that truly broke me. And I need people to understand that, when you see me do weird things like dancing in the streets of San Diego, or literally I have to dance in all the streets of every city I go to, or if you see me trying weird things out, I do it because I get to. And there were many chapters where I could have stopped, where I could have just given up. But I wanted to name myself for myself, and I didn't want anybody else to have a part of that. So I'm always creating things that I hope people will grasp, that if you see somebody come out of prison and you see them do a whole advertising thing about them being at the beach, I need you to understand how significant that is. They have had extreme loss of personal space, of personal movement, of light, in some cases, quite literally, right? Of being able to be outside. If they decide to make their living on a beach, making goofy songs, I'm gonna need you to give them space and not expect them to be your advocate for the rest of their lives. They have given so much of themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, my heart feels for you. I know I'm very sorry. I admire your strength and resilience in overcoming it, and I respect your decision not to report. And for anyone who's thinking, she should have, how many times have women reported and nothing happens? And just look at everything that's happening in the world right now and all the women that are coming out who are reporting and they're, getting dismissed. How do you manage processing the pain and the also moving on and trying to embrace joy and trying to overcome and find your strength? How was that process for you? Because maybe there's someone listening who's gone through something similar who hasn't been able to overcome it and who still feels very dragged down by it.
Right. So like I said, it wasn't the first time and it wasn't the last time that something similar occurred. And honestly, I feel as though I've been very lucky to have the wisdom of my elders, people who came before me who talked about their biggest regrets. I worked as a volunteer in several elderly homes and one hospice, and hearing people who are at the end of their lives talk about the regrets of not trying harder, not loving harder, not pursuing their passions, not feeling like they didn't live to their fullest capability, ingrained in me the desire to not have any of those regrets. For many years, I would tell people I like to live without regrets. I might fuck up a lot along the way, but I also refuse to live with regrets. I will say, at least I tried. At least I tried. And when it comes to other people who were taking quite literally I was going to say my selfhood, but they could never really have that. They were taking my autonomy and trying to use it against me or to harm me or for their own self fulfillment. I became a swinger, and like, I don't think I put that part in the book, and I need to really flesh that out. Thank goodness we have editing, but I became a swinger and I spent almost a decade focused on empowering myself physically with my own body. And so that meant that like if I go to a club where there are other people who are here for their own sexual enjoyment or exploration, I get to choose who has access. I get to choose how they access. For my 30th birthday, again, way too much information. I bet you didn't think we were going here. For my 30th birthday, I threw myself a gangbang
Oh, no way.
in which I did. I got a hotel room. I invited something like 30 different people, men and women. And the whole entire event was about me. And I was very, like, I was emphasizing to everybody, I was like, this is all about me. So if you're coming, it's all for me. And so I chose who drove me. I chose who opened my doors. I chose, like, what everybody wore, who went where, how, when, how often. Like, it was all about me. I did take photos for my own posterity, but this had everything to do with feeling as though I have full autonomy and empowerment in this body. If I don't want you, I don't want you, and I get to say no. And that is something that everybody in here is going to support because they know why they came, right? And that was a way for me to receive back the energy that I felt like others tried to take from me. And it's very funny because that was my 30th birthday. And for some reason, that fixed like a lot of all the stuff I was trying to explore because I've been celibate since then. I'm 40 now. I have been celibate for a decade. So it's not because I don't like sex. I love sex and I would like some more. But I've also been on this spiritual journey of really pulling in as much of my energy as I can that others have taken from me. And I've moved a lot of that energy into the art. So,
Um,
yeah.
okay, I have so many more questions, and some are
I
some
was like, by the way,
some I won't ask. But I will say it's interesting. It was almost like you needed to exercise your control again and give yourself the power back. That is such an remarkable, I think, for somebody listening who might not relate to the gangbang, okay. But it's such a way,
yeah, don't worry about that.
yeah, but you found a way to empower yourself and gave rules and boundaries back to your son card, which made you kind of free.
For It's not for everybody, right?
Yeah, no.
People have asked me that before who know the situation.
Yeah.
And I've told them it's not for everybody, but anything that you can do
Yes.
that will call yourself back to yourself.
Yeah.
I did a reading last night for some folks on TikTok.
Ah.
And when I did that reading, I had a person who was asking about an energy that felt like it was stuck to them or that was leeching them. And I was like, if it happened through your intimacy, that somebody tried to take your power from you, then I encourage you to go and find a way to be intimate with yourself and pull it back in. And because I am who I am, I'm being specific. I was like, if it was in like, if you were in this move, get in that move and take it back for yourself. And I don't mean with anyone else. I do mean for yourself because your body is like it's a big part of who you are. If you don't feel like you can access certain parts of your body, you won't be able to access certain parts of your energy, which is going to prevent you from being like the kind of successful you would like to be in your life. And so you have to reclaim it or you have to work your way through it. That's what somatics is. That's what Reiki is. That's what all of these things are. And so, even if it's just some kind of movement that helps you to feel more embodied in yourself and more in control of what you got going on, you have to call it back in. And I'm not even necessarily saying you got to call it from that person. Energy is infinite. It does not dissipate. It cannot be destroyed. It can be rearranged. And so if that means you have to think about going inside of your body and pulling out that energy and placing it elsewhere, do so. I am a big fan of burning things. Put it in a thing, take it far away from you, get rid of it. Like, do what you have to move it through you. The good news is that it doesn't have to stay.
Absolutely. And so, do you think that when you had the 30th birthday gangbang, that you kind of released a lot of it? Why and how do you think that triggered the 10 years of celibacy? Was it very intentional, or do you think like the celibacy was, I mean, could you talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, it was very interesting because I had already been swinging for years. So when I did this, I knew what I was doing for myself. I have this phrase that I used in the spaces, which is I like to be worshiped and I want to be worshiped, and you will worship me. And if you're not worshiping, I don't deal with you, which is technically how I move through the world without necessarily saying that out loud to people. But it has everything to do with me getting to a point where I understood that a lot of the people who I was sharing my physical energy with, even though I was calling power back into me, they just weren't, what's the word? Up to par.
Get it.
They weren't up to par. And I don't mean that they could not, they're not great at what they do. They are great at what they do. They're just not in alignment with me spiritually and energetically. And there are very few people who are. And I no longer wanted to deal with people who didn't know who they were, didn't know what they wanted out of life. Their only passion was the physical aspect, and there was no depth in that couldn't hold a conversation, that didn't understand the spiritual implications of the actions that were like, I no longer wanted to be intimate or close to people who did not know themselves and who did not have the capacity to understand all of the things that were possible in intimacy. And so I pulled the energy back into myself and I was like, I have a lot of energy. I'm a Scorpio. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy. And I realized how much of my time was going to keeping up dates with other people, how much of my time was going to trying to get other people to elevate, and how much of that time and effort could go towards my own craft and building myself up and, getting to a place where I could come into contact with people who are more energetically aligned. And so it's just, you get to a point in your spiritual path, no matter what's going on, where you recognize nobody here is I'm no longer on the same energetic wavelength as everyone else around me. I need to be in a new space. And I don't know how I get to that new space, but I need to be in a new space.
Did it sometimes feel like you were giving too much and then also there was a lack of depth in those people?
Absolutely. I think right now, a lot of people are very into tarot. They're very into all of the esoteric. People are picking up chakras and picking up Reiki and understanding that there are all these tools that are available to them that have always been available, but they're just now picking them up, right? And kind of getting a grasp on them. And they're learning so much on that first level and not recognizing that there's like a whole ton of other levels to work with. The further into it you get, the more intentional you have to be with your daily life, the more intentional you have to be about what you consume and how you consume it, the more intentional you have to be about how you connect with people. I've gotten to the chapter of my journey where, like, if I have to sign a contract, I have questions, right? Like, I have a lot of questions that I try to work with the astrology as opposed to just doing everything willy nilly because it sounds like a good opportunity. I'm doing research, I'm doing calculations, I'm trying to determine if this is truly in alignment with me energetically for the long term. How would I feel in 15 years with this, like, with people having access to this part of me, 20 years, 30 years? And it's because I have been called to something different. And the more you know that about what you've been called to, the more intentional you have to be about that path. And so, yeah, I think it just, it's one of those things where I hope to meet other people who are just as intentional about their life, with the understanding that we're not talking about perfection here, okay? When I say intentional, I am not talking about perfection. If you could see my little space right now, you would understand I'm not talking about perfection. What I am talking about is intentionality. If your chaos can be intentional, is it
Absolutely.
intentional?
I love something going back to something you said earlier that ties into what you're saying now. You said, I may make a lot of mistakes, but I don't have regrets because I do all the things. And I love that you allow yourself mistakes. Like, mistakes are opportunities for growth and for experience and for, whatever you get out of the mistake. And it's interesting because when you mentioned intentionality, it reminded me of the Ace of Swords. I'm almost picturing the opposite, Eight of Swords, like where there's anxiety and or even the Nine of Swords of overthinking. But this Ace of Swords that you have here, it's very decisive energy. It speaks to what you were saying about being intentional.
I mean, it really is. And it's the hardest thing in the world because so many people are either doing it falsely or they're doing it as like as a way to fit in, where they are very clear on who they want to be and what kind of path they want to walk or what kind of path they've been called to. But they will tone it down or muddle it so that other people feel comfortable because there are so many people who are living in this space of, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be. When if you just look at the facts of their life, if you just look at the basic, I was talking about the magician. I thought I would see the magician. If you just look at the magician, looks around, he goes, I don't know what I've got. And he's like, well, I've got this wand. I guess I could do something with this. And I got this cup. I guess at least I will, have something to hold. They're just basic tools at the beginning of the journey. And if you look at somebody's life, you'll see the basic outline of like what they've been called to. They're just not wanting to, they don't want to follow that path, or they don't want to engage with it, or they don't feel like they're going to be good enough to do it. And so it's really insecurity that's muddling their thoughts. It's a personal insecurity as opposed to there not being clarity of what you've been called to. And so I have to go out of my way to remember to not try to muddle it, not try to fit in with others who feel like they don't know what they're doing with their lives. I have to go out of my way to be like, nope, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. And as much as I may not like the path, as much as I may not like the things I have to do to get where I'm supposed to go, as much as it might be hard because it messes with close relationships. It makes me feel like I'm different from my family, makes me feel like I'm different from the people who I come into contact regularly with. I still need to do it. And so I when I look at the Ace of Swords, it's not a clear blue sky. We're not talking about a clear blue sky. We're not it comes out of a cloud that looks more like smoke to me than anything. And there's that landscape which feels almost desolate, right? And that's because it is a little lonely to have clarity of thought. And that's why so few people want to be that intentional with their path and their journey because it's lonely. It means you will probably one doing the work. So
It reminds me of being our true selves and your Uranus and
mhm,
Gemini, which I think will change a lot of people over the next few years because I think we'll probably become more in touch with our true selves. We have to fit in sometimes, or we feel like we have to fit in with the status quo and society and things. And so sometimes it can be difficult, like, from anything from the way people dress to what they do for a living to how they communicate, whatever, right? And so I think of the Ace of Swords too as, this just sparked the idea at least of being original. And
mhm.
you're definitely original. And it is hard to be original. I think it's one of the most powerful things in the world is to be truly who you are and original. I
If
think,
you look at the
yeah, yeah,
you look at the sword, for all of the desolateness I was talking about, when you look at the top of the sword, it's got that crown and that greenery.
yes.
And I don't know how else to tell people this. It was like, I was talking about scheduling yesterday and how, as a Virgo rising, I really need people to like give me an exact date, time, location, and the specifics of what we're doing and me understanding my role in being present for that thing. If you don't do any of that, you're not on my schedule. My schedule might look empty, but I've already like determined what I'm doing with my morning. I've already determined what I'm going to do. From 2 to 5 p.m., I'm going to sit down and like, work on this thing that I want to work. I've already got an internal schedule for myself as a Virgo rising. In my head, my world is filled with things and pictures and videos and I am happy here, right? So it might be lonely, but there's so much happening in here because I get to spend time with myself. And that is exciting. And so, for as lonely as it might feel for anyone to show up in the Ace of Swords, you might just be a okay with that because you get to have a really exciting interior world that other people don't often feel like they have.
Yeah. I want to
You got
end
a
with,
little crown on you right now.
do I?
Like the way the map looks behind you looks a little bit like a crown.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, no, you're good. You're good.
It reminds me, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent because tying it back to your creative journey, you just finished your memoir. I know you have editing to do. And I see the Ace of Swords as kind of a decision, and the Eight of Pentacles is in the has not happened yet, or what you don't know. And I feel like there's something between them. Like there's another project. I don't know if you're currently deciding that you'll do or that you will decide, but with the outcome as the High Priestess, I feel like you may know, but maybe I don't know. Are you in the process of deciding? Yes. Are you able to speak about it and what your hesitation is?
Yeah.
Or I don't know what's going on there.
No, so it brings in our 5 of coins.
Okay.
So for years, I have felt like I was a novice who was on the Hierophant's journey, not the Hierophant's, the Hermit's journey of trying to discover my own understanding of spirit and how it works and understanding like what its context is in my life and trying to really I was going to say master, but I think embody the lessons of spirit and understand what my approach with spirit was. And the thing that has been sitting on the back of my head for the last, I don't know how many years, is I should really teach classes. I should teach classes. And the classes I should teach are not just things like the tarot, but how to divine with everything, right? I should talk about how you work with the stars to really make sure you're energetically, physically aligned with your, well, with your journey. I should really try to look at all of the things I've learned over the last 20 plus years of being an artist and share that with others. I don't want to work through an institution per se. Like, I'm not trying to go to a college or university and have to deal with all their internal trauma and all of that. Like, I don't have it in me to try to fix what's wrong with academia. That's not where I want to be at. I want to have
Yeah.
fun with this. And there aren't really many containers that provide what I would like to provide in terms of a holistic approach to spirit and creativity. And so I've been thinking about my own launch of a series of classes and workshops that people could take with me that would guide them on a journey, even if it's only like a 6 month journey or a 12-month journey of here's how you be more intentional with your life, specifically for creatives. And I leave that creative door very open. So it's not just for writers or just for painters or just for dancers. I do mean for people who are creating at every level, right? People who come up with apps are creatives. People who are running, campaigns are creatives. People who do content creatives, but help creatives be more intentional and get more connected and aligned with the energy that is specifically theirs. We were talking about like the sword being for the individual and how do you, be unique. It's not hard to be unique. You are unique by simple. I can teach you a whole lot of things, but there are some people who are not going to receive it the way that I teach it. They need you specifically. They need your voice in particular. You've got this special set of words, you got the special tone, you got the special look, whatever it is that's going to draw them in and help them to develop. And it's my job to help you get there. Right. And so it's a whole nother set of offerings is outside the scope of anything I've really done before. And it's something that feels large because in my mind, because we just had the Scorpio full moon, I'll say it out loud. I would love at some point to have acreage where I can develop a physical space for people to attend retreats and to instead of just working on a project with a deadline via contract or kind of how McDowell and Yaddo are set up for people to come in, or Ragdell are set up to come in and like, work on whatever they're working on. I want you to come and get the full scope of spiritual embodiment in your creative practice so that it is more of a transformative process as opposed to a developmental process.
Amazing.
So that's what's been on my mind.
Amazing. The Congo Cosmogram, can you tell us a little bit about that and how you've used it in your own creative practice? I know you've helped others with it also.
So it kind of starts from me when I first left the church. I grew up in a church that's considered a cult. That is, and I keep saying this, and people are like, I'm sorry, what now? It's like, I will write about it one day. I don't even think it's fully inside of the first memoir. I think it's going to have to be its own separate memoir just because of all of the things. But I grew up inside of a church that was considered a cult, the International Church of Christ, the ICOC. And when I left, I was about 18 years old. And the very first thing I went and did was pull up like how Buddhism for dummies and Wicca for dummies and all of these different spiritual traditions for dummies because I was like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know if people even remember that series of books, but I had all of them. And Wicca was the one that I felt most called to. So I started the journey with Wicca. And so I was focusing on the four elements, fire, water, air, and earth, and all the other fun stuff, right? That's where I started. And I was like, okay, this is great. But also, that's really specific to one kind of culture. And I need something that's more in alignment with my ancestors, which, to be honest and truthful, I do have ancestors who practice Wicca. So, like, that's not disingenuous for me. It's just not the only place that I needed to be in. And so I started studying hoodoo and voodoo. I am a hoodoo practitioner, not a voodoo practitioner. Voodoo does require an initiatory process. I am not a part of that. Hoodoo is more inherited in terms of like formerly enslaved people without practice. The Congo is where some of my people are from. And the Congo had a cosmogram. And I did not discover this for several years. A few years back, I did. I was so excited. Thank you. Shout out to JSTOR, JSTOR. It is my friend because there was a man who had written about the Congo cosmogram as a narrative structure. And I said, narrative structure? I'm a writer. I've never heard of this. Is this a non Western focused narrative structure? Is this a structure that operates outside of everything I've been taught in academia? And I was like so excited about this. But it also maps directly onto things like seasons and elements. So it starts with conception, goes to birth, goes to maturity, goes to death. There are four aspects of it. It's in the shape of a circle, so much like the medicine wheel for the Native Americans here in North America. And it has the same kind of color scheme. So yellow and red and black and white for all the different parts. And it maps onto seasons. It maps all the way onto seasons. So spring, summer, fall, winter, and it maps onto the elements, right? So fire, earth, water, air, all of that. And so it was one of these tools that I was like, oh my God, all of it makes sense to me. And so there's multiple layers to it. Obviously, when you talk about birth and death, and they're right next to each other in a cosmogram, so you cannot have a birth without a death, and you cannot have a death without a birth. And how, quite literally, in my life, my fiance died in May of 2010, and then my child was born in October of 2012. So, like, of course, I've got these two big parentheses in my life of death and life. And the whole cosmogram, it means so much to me. And so a lot of my work, you will find sets of four. Now, if there aren't four sections, there are going to be three sections, and the fourth section is the entire piece. So you have to pull out to see the entire piece, and that would represent the fourth section. That's what it is in my first book, where I've got three sections: the first rite of water, the first rite of smoke, first rite of, all that. And then the fourth part is fire, and the book is fire. You see the cool little trying to be cool with it. And then a map of my want, same kind of approach. I entered into the Congo cosmogram to make sure that I was having elements of death to start off. And so we open up with coasting, which is about me literally leaving my sister at one coast, the West Coast, right? And by the end of the book, we should have reached the East Coast at some point and have another kind of separation. And so, yeah, there are multiple layers to it. It's in a shape. The circle is something that we see not just on this planet, but of course, all the other planets out yonder, the shapes of the galaxies and things like that. And so it makes sense to work with the Congo cosmogram.
It's like energetically, it's cyclical. It's like everything being renewed or going through cycles.
Yeah, the Congo cosmogram, if you put it flat, like if it's flat and this is the circle up here
Uh huh.
and it keeps going the layers, you got a helix. You have the double helix,
Uh-huh.
quite literally. So the shape of our lives. I also have elements of fractals in my memoir, and fractals are just the repeating of a thing. That's the easiest, quickest way to get to that, is the repeating and the layering of it. We have fractals literally all around us. Our DNA is a kind of fractal. And so the Congo cosmogram ended up becoming multidimensional to me because it was, like you're saying, there are cycles, and these cycles will bring you to a death again and again, but in different layers. For context, today is the 16th anniversary of the day that I went to jail. Officially, May 2nd of 2010 is the 16th anniversary of the day I went to jail. And a lot of my career has been around social justice. And so here we are again, coming back around to this really incredible turning point in my life.
And well, I can't help it but to know I pulled 8 cards for you accidentally, and look at the world
There you
there.
go.
And the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and I didn't want to pull 8 cards, but we have. The world is air, fire, water. And then you talk
Mhm.
about your 16th anniversary of the day you were incarcerated, not freed, right? Incarcerated.
Mhm. Mhm.
What are your thoughts and feelings like being 16 years later?
So 16 years ago, my fiance had died in April. So I went to jail 2 weeks after his funeral. So we're talking about like this time period for me 16 years ago was devastating, absolutely devastating. There was no, I've been afraid to go look at the astrology for 2010 just in case I see the astrology coming back up. I'm just like, I don't want to look at it. It's going to be because it was devastating. I lost my friend, Gabrielle Boulain, in January of 2010. Me and my fiance went to the hospice to see her. Then he died in April of 2010. And then a few weeks later, I get arrested. I go to jail for 45 days. I get out of jail. I have lost my car, everything that I own. I'm like literally homeless and with no clothes. And I have to start grad school. And in my first semester of grad school, we've got this person writing on the back of my work, like, I don't even know how you got in here. You don't deserve to be here. Like all kinds of stuff. Right. So, like, even my love for poetry is being attacked. Everything was being attacked in 2010. What it feels like at this point in time is that when we talk about cycles, it really feels like this is the reclamation period. So many people are upset and disturbed by the way our government is being torn into pieces, quite literally being torn into pieces, elements being completely deleted or erased, things being replaced. It's 2:22 on my clock. And things, yeah, things being pulled apart and people going, oh no. And I'm like, this is the tower, everybody. And they're like, oh my God, tower card is horrible. And I was like, except that right after the tower comes hope. Except that right after everything is destroyed, you get an opportunity to rebuild and to rebuild better than before, or to never go back to that thing ever again. This is the 250th anniversary this year on July 4th of this country as we know it with the Declaration of Independence. That declaration is a piece of writing that we all agreed to. And if it isn't working for everyone, can we not have a brand new piece of writing that we would like to agree to? And so for me, I look at this moment like in my personal life and I go, if anyone is specifically positioned to talk about the combination of what's happening in the sky, astrology wise, and what's happening social justice wise, and the impact of words that are then proclaimed to be laws, right? Because every law is just a bunch of words. We all said, yep, we agree, right? So if I, the writer, have an opinion about the words and I have an understanding of what's happening in the sky, I think this is the time for the artist. I really feel as though we're going to see an uptick in people being conscious and spiritually aware of what needs to change or grow. I do think we're going to see a lot of artists who are taking their art past the need to just express into the space of with purpose, right? I think a lot of artists are going to move into a space of let me develop this with purpose. And I think because of the influx of AI, being a person who can create something organically and do that in the presence of others, being able to share your physical space and your physical self with others, I think that is going to become even more of value in the next few years. And I think because we're watching the country be torn apart, the creatives are going to be the ones suggesting a restructure, because if we can all recognize that the government and our way of picking politicians has not been working for us, we are going to aim in a different direction. Mom Donnie being a wonderful example of what that would look like. Mom Donnie is a rapper. People may or may not know that, but I just watched like 15 videos of the rapper Mom Donnie, who then became the mayor Mom Donnie, who has been signing into law the things that need to be signed into law and taking action in the ways that we need to see it. And so I see my work as at this point in time, I had to go through that loss. I had to go through that arrest. I had to go through that academia experience. I had to go through giving birth and understanding what that is. I had to go through all of those pieces so that I could be wise enough to stand here and offer guidance on how to deal with this in a spiritual way and a practical way. So, yeah.
I do hope that it will be rebuilt better and by people with a little more heart and a little more rawness and a little more humanity. I think we're going to wrap it up here, but I do want to say, Faylita, I am so grateful to you for just being so deep and so raw and so real. I appreciate you very much. I don't know if you know, but I do go to UNR. the low residency program.
You do?
Yeah,
Okay. No, I
so
didn't know that.
you'll be there in
Yay. Well, then I
August.
will see you in August.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, we should do a thing in August. I would love to do that. I hadn't decided what I was going to teach for this semester. It is for context. I went to like UNR when it was S&C. So this is the same program that I got my MFA from eventually. I left that other program, worked a real job, and then went to this program. And this is where I got my MFA. So I'm the first student to graduate and come back and teach.
No
And
way.
yes, my mentor, Lee Herrick, just stepped down. And so I am taking his spot, which is like a big thing to be like, what? The teacher? But I hadn't decided what I wanted my focus to be for this upcoming semester. But I think it's probably going to be about kind of somewhere in here. So I love that you're doing this. I think that a lot of folks can sometimes feel as though, and I'm going to use the language I hear other people use, the woo woo
Yeah.
doesn't have a place in serious academia, except that the serious academia, like everything from the construction of the building to the construction of the bylaws to the, you are all doing woo woo. Like there's a reason why you chose the dates that you chose and the location that you chose and the names that you chose. You're all, doing a thing. And so we might focus on studying some of this.
Be
I
so.
don't know. Are you a poet?
Well, I do write poetry, but just for fun and for myself. I don't even know like if it's really poetry, but I would have loved to take in your course. I know that some of my peers are taking it and are very excited to have you, but I am fiction and I will be in fiction workshop unfortunately. I will miss yours.
I'll see if I can teach an elective.
That'll be cool.
I'll see if I can teach an elective,
Yeah.
but I'm excited that you're doing this. I can't wait for you to keep doing this. I think a lot more people want to have these conversations. Like I said, I wanted to do this,
I know.
and it was one of the things that I decided not to do just because it was taking like of all the things I needed to get done. I decided that this was something I would do later down the road, but I'm happy that you're doing it because now I know somebody's doing it and be like, keep doing that. I got more ideas. Don't worry. Keep
Thank
doing
you.
that.
And for context, for anyone listening, Faylita, when I invited you to come on, you had mentioned that, wait, I thought of doing a YouTube tarot interview show. So I thought it was pretty cool. And I would say if you still feel ever the need to do one, do it. And, I don't know. There's plenty of room.
Now, I have another idea in mind that will be similar, but it will involve shots.
Shots
Shots,
of
shots, shots,
alcohol?
shots, shots. I want to do. Telling on myself on the internet, which means more than likely with all the things happening in the sky, I have to do it at some point. I want to get sponsored by a whiskey company and I want us to do writing prompts with shots. For every shot, you get a new writing prompt. But also, I want to call it Spirit and Ink. So that way it's kind of like we'll have drinks and we'll talk about spiritual things as creatives. And so I just want it to be a more relaxed kind of, let's do the things, but also
Yeah.
let's
Let's keep it
do the
chill.
things. I
Yeah.
gotta get mocktails. I gotta get mock things. Like I have to figure this out. So
I love it. Quickly go grab that YouTube channel before I'm gonna post this, but quickly go grab that YouTube handle.
got it. Got it.
I love
Will
that.
do.
I love
No,
that.
really. I've been thinking about it and it literally I was working on it yesterday. I was like, I can do this. And then I was like, but Philita, do you have the time? So yes.
So thank you very much for being here. I'm so grateful.
No, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
And quickly, Faylita, let for
Yes.
anyone listening, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. TikTok, I am way more active on TikTok than I am on Instagram. TikTok is where you're going to hear me talk a lot of mess and look a lot messy, but Instagram is where you'll see my fancy stuff. You can go to my website, www.faylitahicks.com. It's going through an update. And so there will be more information there, but you can always book with me at faylita.hicks@gmail.com. I do editorial consultations with a spiritual spin. So if you're looking for somebody to line edit and do a tarot reading or line edit and look at the astrology for your submission process, that is me. And yeah, I do a lot of things. So yeah, we didn't even talk about the poetry ceremonies or nothing.
I know we did it. Well,
It's all
maybe.
good. Well,
So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us here at Writing Marginalia with the fabulous Faylita Hicks. Our next guest will be writer, author, musician Gina Frangelo. So please be sure to check us out again in late May. You can subscribe, like, leave a comment, and share this video to help our channel grow. Thank you so much. Until next time, take care.